So when Gigante was told of Savino's betrayal,
I don't have that one.
he chose not to believe it.
Okay, we're gonna do
refused to order him killed.
scissors, death, run. Okay.
Trying to get other family members to acknowledge Chin and his position as boss of the family.
Not really, in my opinion.
Gigante's troops,
Okay, it's
however,
loading.
could never be persuaded to break the boss's rule.
Y'all, bro, I'm sorry I ain't set up this video, so we're just starting from here. Welcome to the rodeo.
To go off and get to work.
It was, don't mention that name. How can you talk like that? That was pretty damning proof.
Jackson, shut up.
Even though it didn't give
Stop
you a
saying
specific
stuff like that,
crime,
okay?
It told you that this was a man to be feared.
Just stop.
It was hardly somebody who was incompetent.
But
shortly
still
thereafter,
loading.
it came to Gigante's attention that Savino was in fact cooperating.
Y'all better know this is
Furious at this betrayal, Gigante
but I
ordered
started
the
game, but it
murder of
won't
Savino.
stop. Okay, finally.
By that time, the FBI
Jackson, are you in the game?
Savino well out of Genevieve's family reach, but not before he supplied agents with thousands of hours of taped conversations.
Mr. Savino was also in a position
in the
to
game?
provide us with the historical aspects of how this scheme developed.
Okay, which side we going?
With
What
the
way?
leaders of both the Lucchese and Genovese crime families.
That way.
And what their participation was in this thing.
Okay, let's go.
Savino also was able to tell us how the various members of all of these
Do you know which way to go?
interacted with Local 580, which was used again as a tool to make the scheme work.
Good job.
The FBI was
I was trying to mess with you. I just about to mute you. Oh god.
As a result, high-ranking family members saw that their only way to avoid long prison terms was to cooperate.
Fudge, I ain't gonna get
family
this.
underboss Salvador Senator Bolgravano.
Can't get.
Finally arrested and charged under the RICO laws with ordering 6 people murdered, conspiring to kill 3 others, and at least 24 counts of racketeering.
Why wouldn't it turn, bro?
He was charged with being the boss of the Genovese crime family. But Gigante still had his mental illness history to fall back on.
The charm.
Mr. Gigante was indicted.
God, kid, you're retarded.
Second filed against him in June of 1993. The case against Mr. Gigante was unusual, that it spanned several years before it actually went to trial. He eventually went to trial in June of 1997. During that period of time, the issue that was before the courts was that
I didn't even get the ice on accident.
That issue was finally resolved in 1996.
7 years after his arrest, a federal district judge declared Vincent Gigante competent to stand trial. Vincent the Chin Gigante was 69 years old when a jury convicted him of conspiring to kill 3 mafia figures, including Gotti and Savino. He was also found guilty of extortion and union payoff conspiracies in the window replacement scheme. But jurors failed to convict him on charges of directly ordering 6 murders. Now that Gigante was convicted, his defense lawyers argued that he was not fit to be sentenced. They claimed he was too old, too frail, and too mentally incompetent to understand the punishment.
I hate them. Shut up, Jackson.
While awaiting
You're
sentencing,
gonna get me
Gigante was
copyrighted.
confined to a prison hospital and examined by several doctors.
It's Bob and Bill, like
Gigante was given several
star.
PET scans, a procedure that uses a radioactive tracer to measure brain chemistry. A 1991 scan, first read as normal, was later found to be too flawed to use in diagnosis. The 1993 scan did show some abnormalities. But at least one expert, Dr. Jonathan Brody, judged these abnormalities as not consistent with dementia. Dr. Brody is an attending psychiatrist at New York's Bellevue Hospital and a professor at New York University.
Why'd you do that, kid?
He also conducts research on schizophrenia.
Mr. Gigante, at the time of the scan, was
Finally.
reportedly taking medication that affects the brain. And because it affects the brain, it affects brain chemistry. And brain chemistry is what a PET scan is all about.
Gigante was taking an antipsychotic medication, an antidepressant,
Oh, y'all wasn't paying
a
attention.
tranquilizer, and sleeping pills.
Bruh. Still on
So
the
Dr.
first
Brody
level,
was
and it's been like
skeptical
5
about the PET
minutes.
scan, but had yet to examine the patient.
When the three of us entered the observation room, the examining room where he was then brought, I was
Bruh, I was so close.
his appearance, which I said made me think, oh my God,
I was so close.
he really is sick. I've missed the boat. He's really very sick. He came in wearing a bathrobe. He was shuffling. He was mumbling. He was making allusions to God.
But as the examination progressed, some of Gigante's
Yo, bro, I
actions
got the
began
clip
to
for that
raise
one.
doubts.
Nigga wanna what? Call on nigga what? Go.
One of the
Like
things that really struck me was
welcome to the
that I
rodeo.
didn't note at the time, but I
Shorty
noted a
wanna
few
fuck me
seconds
'cause a
later,
nigga
was
wearing gold.
when I put out my hand for him to shake it, he didn't shake it. And that's a very automatic behavior. You put your hand up.
Oh man, I was so close to the purples. Oh my. Oh my. What level you on, Carl? Hello? Oh my. Hello? This is harder. Hello? Hello?
Lines
What?
statements to that he had to decide that he was competent to be sentenced. It was completely at odds with what his lawyers were
Fudge.
telling Judge Weinstein.
What?
Some psychiatrists thought
Okay.
Gigante really was incompetent. Others thought he was faking. 5 months and dozens of tests later, the judge ruled. The judge said, in short, the defendant's cognitive and emotional capacity and his communication skills
Let's
were equivalent to
go.
other 69-year-old defendants with limited education. No hallucinations interfere with his abilities to participate in sentencing. He understands the fundamentals of criminal substantive law and procedure. He's deliberately feigning mental illness to avoid punishment which he fears. Defendant is competent to be sentenced and to serve an appropriate term in prison. Shaliro described efforts of the FBI and prosecutors as historic and courageous.
Fudge.
This has been a battle that certainly I've been involved with for the last 20 years, and certainly I think agents that will continue that on over the next 5 or 6 years. If the effort can be sustained and the resources maintained, I think we're on the verge of really reducing the effects and the impact of the Cosa Nostra.
To be sure, the government's legal victory in the Gigante case is partial. The jury, after all, failed to convict him of the 6 murder charges. But the goal was complete. Vincent Gigante is in prison now, serving a 12-year sentence for murder, conspiracy, and racketeering, stripped of the terrible power he once wielded. It was Mother's Day, May 13th, 1984, a warm spring afternoon near Tampa, Florida. After spending time with their moms, 2 boys jumped off to fly parachutes made from plastic bags. It was the perfect way to spend the Sunday. But soon, the wind brought a foul smell. They went off to investigate and found a sight they would remember for the rest of their lives.
Yo, this might be stupid, but I got an idea. It was stupid.
In 1984 in South Florida, a rapist and murderer was on the loose. The killer was a ruthless and terrifying predator, the newest member of an infamous group known as serial killers. He kills just for the sake of it. And though his acts at first seem random, his choice of victims is fiercely selective. A woman's occupation, or even her hairstyle, may be enough to make her a target. It takes time, at least 2 kills, before the pattern emerges. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former director of the FBI's New York office. The serial killer's world is a delicate balance. On one side,
Yo, we about to do
Meanwhile,
this
the
like a
body was brought
speed
to the medical
run.
examiner's office with the ligatures in place for him to study and photograph. The medical examiner determined the victim had been raped, then strangled to death. The brutality of the crime brought a sense of urgency to the investigation. Fearing this would not be an isolated case, Lieutenant Terry immediately contacted the FBI's forensics lab in Washington, D.C.
Wait, no, we're taking this like a speed run.
Terry
Wow.
had a detective hand-carry the evidence to the FBI lab. He had learned during an earlier case that doing so expedited the processing of evidence and brought the FBI in as an immediate active partner. The FBI lab is one of the foremost forensics laboratories in the country. There are experts on every type of evidence, from bullets to fibers to vehicle parts to nuts. The FBI's knot expert analyzed the ligatures from the Tampa victim's wrists and throat. They had been removed intact in hopes they'd tie the killer to his deed. They might also say something about his past.
Fudge.
Specialized knots might reveal that he'd been a merchant marine or in the military. But the ligatures turned out to be
Who you calling?
granny knots, simple, functional knots that anyone might have tied.
Since when does she have a phone?
An FBI fiber expert analyzed the fabric found near the body. He brushed particles from the cloth onto a sterile sheet. What traces had the killer left behind?
Fudge.
The analyst scanned the particles with a magnifier, but he didn't expect
It's
to
3
find
minutes and we're on level
such evidence
2.
is easily lost through weather or other contamination of the crime scene. In fact, the rule of thumb for fiber evidence is in 4 hours, 80% is lost. In 48 hours, it's 96%. After 3 days, the chance of finding anything is almost nil. So he was amazed when he found a small speck of red nylon fiber. It was trilobal, meaning it consisted of 3 lobes and had a lustrous or shiny coating. From its size, type, and shape, he guessed it was a carpet fiber, maybe from the killer's
I'll
coat.
jump too early.
The fact that it was there at all was a minor miracle. The analyst from the FBI lab told the Hillsborough detectives to keep the discovery secret. If this were a serial killer, publicizing fiber evidence would make him change his pattern or his vehicle, so he'd be harder to find.
Fudge.
The FBI's tire lab also scored. From the tire casts, they determined the tires were of 2 different brands. All were well worn and mounted reversed, with the black walls facing out. An irregularity like that could be powerful, incriminating evidence. Back in Tampa, police identified the victim from her fingerprints the day after her body was found. She was Lana Long, a 20-year-old Laotian woman, a popular exotic dancer in Tampa's red light district. Her boyfriend had recognized her from the
Bro, what I do to you, bro? It's right there.
She was also bound at the hands and throat and had a knot at her neck with a leash-like extension. But this knot was different. It was a hangman-style noose.
I can remember driving all the way to the crime scene and saying to myself, please don't let this victim be bound. In 1984, we very rarely had homicide victims bound. That's the first thing I asked the officer protecting the crime scene when I drove up.
Yo, I don't even know if we're gonna make it past this.
She'd been reported missing the day before. A key member of the Hillsborough County investigative team was Detective Randy Latimer.
At this point, though, we realize we're dealing with a serial killer that looked like he was
I'm about to do this
probably
one more
preying on
time,
prostitutes.
and if I don't make it,
we
I'm
went out
gonna
into
get
the areas of the known
one more time.
prostitute areas and then started contacting the girls and let them know what was going on, giving them our
If
business
I don't
cards.
do this
If they
this
saw
time,
something
I'm gonna
strange,
go
contact us,
crazy.
let us know. We're looking for information. We were frustrated that we couldn't get any leads, we couldn't get anything to go on.
Yeah, if I don't do it this time for
Then on June 24th, another Sunday, Terry, Baker, and Latimer responded to a third murder scene. A worker found
okay, I'm about done here. If I don't even get close this time, there's gonna be something wrong, and I'm gonna go
but the
AWOL.
pattern seemed different. This one was fully closed, and there were no ligatures, so there was no reason to believe it was linked.
Fook.
Well, as you can see,
But detectives didn't rule it out.
Pull that though. Fook. You know what I'm
They
saying? I'm
delivered
being
the
bad
victim's
because I
clothing
said
to the
fook.
FBI lab, just in case a connection could be found. This time, the fiber expert they had worked with before was not available, and someone else was assigned. He wasn't asked to compare the new evidence to the old, so he didn't. Nor did he begin the analysis immediately.
If
The
someone
body was so
knows,
badly
like,
decomposed it only
comment
weighed
down
25
below
pounds,
what time.
It took some time to get an ID, and when it finally came, the victim's lifestyle didn't fit the pattern either. 22-year-old Elizabeth Ludenbach of Tampa was a shy assembly line worker who lived with her family. She had no criminal
I'm doing this
history and
stream
was not a prostitute,
for an
although she
hour.
did
I mean,
frequent
not stream,
bars
but
on Tampa's
broadcast
Strip.
for an hour. And then I might do some My
An
Player
older
on
Elizabeth
2K.
Rose said to find her boyfriend if anything happened to her. So detectives ordered a polygraph.
Oh, God.
Ask you a series of questions. You just need to answer yes or no to those questions. You understand?
yeah.
Oh, my God.
Did you know Elizabeth Ludenbach?
Yes.
Did you have a relationship with Elizabeth Ludenbach?
Yes.
Did you ever harm Elizabeth Ludenbach?
No.
He failed the polygraph test, making him the prime suspect.
What the heck? Why would it do that?
It wasn't until mid-September, 3 months after the discovery of Elizabeth's body in the Orange Grove, that the results came in.
Yeah.
The FBI
Fudge.
had a match.
Yeah.
They found red carpet fibers identical to those found in the first two murders.
Looks like Ludenbach is ours. Good. Red fibers. Okay.
Now they
Good.
had 3 related killings. Terry entered the new scene on the map.
Any kind of significant difference?
Every detective on the homicide squad was working the case. The nature of the investigation began to change. Instead of focusing on boyfriends and neighbors, detectives pursued an unknown killer terrorizing the women of Tampa.
We've taken the entire homicide unit now, are concentrating on these cases. And we're running down leads, we're getting telephone calls about different people, and we're checking those leads out. We're doing a background investigation of these particular victims, and we're coming up empty. And all we have to do is, unfortunately, wait, and then there's another victim that's discovered. And that is victim number 4.
After a lull of more than 3 months, the calm of yet another Sunday was shattered. On October 7th, a worker found a body near the entrance to the K-Bar Ranch in northern Hillsborough County. This time, Detective Steve Pribb was assigned to help process the scene.
But this one, I feel like it feels impossible, but I know it ain't.
Piece of evidence.
But I ain't do it right.
Hanging from the entrance gate. The nude body of a young black woman was nearby. Her clothing was beside her. Most of the detectives ruled her out as a serial victim. She had been raped, but unlike the others, she had been shot, not strangled, and there were no ligatures. Also, she was African American, and usually serial killers don't cross racial boundaries.
Get her into a controlled environment, we'd be able to really...
While the FBI analyzed the evidence, detectives identified the victim from fingerprints. 18-year-old Chanel Devon Williams had just recently been released from jail on a prostitution arrest.
Yo, y'all should go check out my new video. It's about uploaded.
She was last seen working the red
it's me 1v1
along Nebraska Avenue with a friend, a few days before. She had been dead about 6 days.
Shorty, fucking nigga could be wearing gold.
The FBI's hair and fiber analysis revealed it was the work of the serial killer. Both types of red fibers were found on Chanel's clothing, along with a brown Caucasian pubic hair. By crossing racial bounds and using a different weapon, the killer had changed his routine. Shifting from a pattern is very rare in serial killers, and would make this one more difficult to capture. Chanel was added to the map near the Pasco-Hillsborough County line. With 4 dead, detectives were desperate to find the killer and obsessed with the case.
You don't work these cases. You live and breathe these types of cases. You go home at night and you dream about this case. You eat and sleep it. I would go home at night and just look at the telephone, waiting for it to ring. Every Sunday, for some reason, the first series of bodies were discovered on Sunday. On Sunday, I didn't plan anything. I sat at home.
Indeed, the Sunday after Chanel's body turned up, Terry, Baker, Latimer, and Pribb were called to another murder scene. This one was near Lake Thanodasasa, northeast of town. A couple of amateur archaeologists had uncovered a mortal find. At the side of the road was a woman's body, wrapped in a gold-colored bedspread, tied with a blue jogging suit.
We need that tape.
Inside, her lower legs and ankles were bound with common white string. Her hands were tied.
Now we're going to try to do it the normal way.
She had been bound, raped, strangled, hit on the forehead, and dragged through the dirt. It seemed the killer was back to his old pattern. The woman was quickly identified from fingerprints as 28-year-old Karen Dinsfriend. Raised in an affluent suburban household, she had died a drug-ravaged prostitute. She was last seen alive in the early hours of the day she was killed. As if there weren't enough